What's up, folks? My name is Tim Wheaton, and we are the MMA Sucka crew. I am joined, as always, by the editor at MMA Sucka, Frazer Krohn. Frazer, how are you doing today, sir?
Yeah, good. Thank you, mate. How are you?
Oh, hanging out the usual stuff. Now, today we're going to get to a couple of major things that happened. We're going to break down the Costa Vettori fight. We're going to break down everything from Saturday night, and then we're going to go to UFC 267 and break down all the top fights on that card. So we got a really busy show planned, but I want to talk about a couple things before we really jump in because Saturday night was a busy night. We had KSW, we had Belltor, we had UFC, and we had a Glory fight. Before that, we had one championship. First Strike had a big fight. In the MMA world, it's been a little bit slow, but in the kickboxing world, it's been a lifetime. We've seen some of the biggest changes. We've seen some of the biggest happenings in kickboxing history in the last couple of weeks here. At Glory First Strike, Giorgio Petrosian was knocked out by Superbon. He's the next great up and comer. He's probably the next great in kickboxing, no doubt. And he did it via head kick. Now, the last time that Giorgio Petrosian lost was in 2013, and it was considered an upset then. He's been undefeated since 2013 and got knocked out with a broken jaw. He had a fight scheduled a couple weeks after that one. Of course, it's been canceled at this point. Just absolutely insane to see it happen. One of the all-time greats in Giorgio Petrosian getting knocked out. Did you watch this event? Did you see the fight?
No, I saw the highlights from it, and it was, I mean, you watch MMA week in, week out, but MMA guys don't strike like these kickboxing guys. You know, every shot was to the money. Technique was phenomenal, and then obviously we got the head kick knockout, like you said. What was worrying is that how long he stayed down, and then we were getting reports he was rushed straight to hospital. But luckily, then a few hours later, we got sort of word from his management that he's going to hospital for the obvious reason, but it's not as bad as it first looked, because that was, like I say, you see these MMA guys and the head kick knockouts, and they occasionally do stay down, but you rarely see it sort of with such an impact as we saw then. But luckily, yeah, we got the reports that he is okay. I think his pride's hurt more than anything. But yeah, I think it's one of those that it definitely sent sort of shockwaves through. It's not what you expect.
No, and it's been wild to see all the other kind of podcasts that I listen to talking about. Never talk about kickboxing, never even talk about other like Bellators, never talk about PFLs. They're talking about Giorgio Petrosian now. Like, that's how big this was. This was a major deal. Superbon is just so good with those kicks. He was setting up to the body all night. He had the timing of when you're exiting or entering an exchange is when he was striking. That's an insane thing to be that good at striking, that you can time it before your opponent throws or just after they're done throwing. Absolutely insane. Did you catch the Glory card at all from a couple of nights back?
I didn't. I know that you watched it. I saw Gokhan Saki's finish, which is, how much a fan I am of leg kicks anyway. But then when it's done with that kind of technique and that kind of power, it's just, oh yeah, it was brilliant to watch. I love a leg kick, and I just think that they're underused in MMA. And I think Gokhan Saki is showing that, obviously, although it is kickboxing, if you've got two stand-up guys in MMA, just chop that leg, and there's no way that it can't debilitate your opponent. You quite literally take away the base, and you turn strikers into wrestlers. And I saw Rico Verhoeven's cut. I didn't actually see the fight, but I saw that nasty cut that he had underneath his eye. But I know that you watched the card, so.
Yeah, I'll talk a little bit about it. Gokhan Saki been away for 6 years, as you noted. He fought James McSweeney, a notoriously tough man. He fought in bare knuckle boxing, fought in the UFC, fought in Bellator, fought in, I think, like KSW as well. He's fought all over the place, and now he's been fighting in K1 and Glory. Gokhan Saki finished him in the second round with leg kicks. Gokhan Saki, notably with leg kicks, he gave credit to Ernesto Hoost. He says he's been training with Ernesto Hoost, and even after 20 years in kickboxing, he's still learning how to get better. We'll see if he does any well. He looked a little bit old. I mean, James McSweeney is not the best kickboxer, but having been away for 6 years, it's a great victory to have, and the crowd absolutely loved it. So we'll see what the future holds for him. I mean, I'm happy for him. I don't think he's going to be a top contender. Love a leg kick TKO, like you talked about. Rico Verhoeven versus Jamal Ben Sadek. This was a grudge trilogy. They're 1-1 in the series. Ben Sadek, he is a massive person. He was the biggest person in Glory kickboxing. Been away for a couple of years and scored a knockdown early on Rico Verhoeven. He cut his shin open, so there was a big slice going down his shin. It was a bloody war. They just back and forth the entire time until the fourth round TKO, because Jamal was kind of leaning over the ropes and just taking punches. The referee asked him some questions and he didn't really respond to anything. He didn't know where he was or what was going on. So Rico got the victory, and a very hard fought victory. One of the great title fights in history. It was a great war. My favorite part was what's the gentleman's name? They brought in one of the old I forget his name now. They brought in one of the great K1 champions to do color commentary. Remy Bonjasky, of course, from the Netherlands, of course. Great kickball, one of the great like K1 champions in history. They brought him in to do commentary. So they just had their great heavyweight title fight, an amazing fight, a knockdown fight, one of the great nights in glory kickboxing history. And then they cut to Remy and they asked, like, what did you think of the fight? And he's like, these guys look terrible. Like, how do you fight 4 rounds and you're already exhausted? These guys look like garbage. Like, dude, Remy, you're being paid to promote this show. Yeah. So that was my favorite part of the night. And then we went into the UFC. Actually, let's quickly cover off a couple of things. They won't take long to do. Mariusz Pujanowski, the 5-time world's strongest man. We finally get to settle the argument. Who's better, strongmen or Senegalese wrestlers? We no longer have to argue. It's been the timeless argument for centuries. They fought a super heavyweight fight, 270 pounds versus 330 pounds. Mariusz Pujanowski essentially just punched a man in the head, blocked one punch, punched back, and that was the fight. A 17-second knockout in the first round. I was so excited to watch this. What did you think of it?
Yeah, it was, I mean, Pujanowski, coming from the sort of world's strongest man scene, you expect him to get knockover fights all the time. And to be honest, you know, he's done really well. He's done a lot better than I thought he would. I thought, you know, he's coming in as almost a bit of a celebrity fighter, and he's got quite a decent record from what I can remember. But this fight, you know, it's a pure wrestler. It's Ben Askren-esque with no striking. I think watching the highlight, it looked to me as if he was throwing a hammer fist while stepping forward, and it's never gonna. And to be honest, like we were saying with the heavyweight boxers the other week, and like many people have said about when Eddie Hall fights the Mountain, the 2 strong men in the boxing, one punch from a guy that big and powerful is, if it doesn't put you out, it's going to scramble your brain. And obviously we saw it just put him straight out. And it was in a way disappointing because, you know, 17 seconds is 7. It's like the Aldo McGregor. There was all that build up. Mm-hmm. Obviously we had it cancelled, I'm pretty sure, on the day last time it was scheduled. 17 seconds is what it is. But the size of the guys, I don't think they would have been able to go and put on a decent show for 15 minutes. So maybe it's the best of a potentially bad situation. But it was just seeing 2 guys that big just throw down. And, you know, the weigh-ins, KSW allow obviously guys to sort of have sponsorships just painted on their body, and it's all a bit crazy. I can't imagine the UFC ever doing that, to be honest. But
no, in KSW, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just saying it's strange to see a man just with you know, essentially a sponsorship deal just painted onto his body. It's different for sure.
Yeah, they have a little bit of a different philosophy, and I think in Poland itself, like they get better ratings than the UFC does in Poland. So, and they even talk on Reddit. Like, you can message KSW on Reddit, you can talk to them on Twitter. They're very open with saying, like, this is a sport, but this is also a spectacle. And that's what drives ratings. Like, we're not talking about their bantamweight title fight, which was great. We're not talking about their welterweight title eliminator, which was another great fight. We're just like, man, these super heavyweights, that's where it's at. 17-second fight. Yeah, Bombardier didn't look good. I don't think he learned how to strike. I don't think he's a healthy person at that weight. He's not in his athletic prime. Somehow Pujanowski, he keeps training and actually taking this seriously. Like, he had bad losses to James Thompson and Tim Sylvia, but that's impressive that he took fights against James Thompson and Tim Sylvia early in his career. And he can barely, like, move. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. It's just so big and so just tight with all of his shots. But like you say, Bombardier, he's not an MMA fighter, he's a Senegalese wrestler, and it's completely, you know, these guys are just there's 2 battering rams just going at each other in the Senegalese wrestling. I managed to catch some of it on YouTube. Mm-hmm. But I think when they first were scheduled to fight, and it's just 2 guys just smashing into each other. There's not, to be honest, in my opinion, there's not an awful lot of technique like you see in the sort of NCAA sort of American traditional wrestling style. It's almost a mixture between that and sumo of two men just sort of hitting each other. There's obviously they're not as big as the sumo guys, but it's whoever can make the biggest hit and be the most powerful is kind of going to come out on top. And when you've got someone like you say 330 pounds, to be honest, that almost looked to be Bombadil's tactic going into the Pujanowski fight, crowding with strikes and looked to depress on him. I think he was about 80 pounds, 70 pounds heavier than Pujanowski. So that's going to make a difference. And if he sort of just blitzes in, crowds him with a load of strikes and manages to get him into the clinch, then it's more or less in his world. But unlucky for him, he got caught coming in. And like we say, if you get caught by someone that's got that kind of strength, it's going to be a short night for you.
It was quite a spectacle to watch. At the same time that Glory was having their heavyweight kickboxing fight, Belltor was having their main event. Fedor Emelianenko, at 45 years old, knocks out Timothy Johnson in the first round in 1 minute and 40 seconds, headlining in Moscow. It's kind of, with the walkout, with the hype behind it, fighting in Moscow. I as much as I want to say Fedor needs to retire, kind of got swept up in the hype for this one. This kind of like got me just as the fight was starting. I was like, man, Fedor is fighting. Holy crap. This is a big deal. What do you think of the fight? What do you think of the moment? What do you think of Fedor's career?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I kind of agree with you with the fact that I got, this is a Fedor fight in Russia for the first time, I think, since 2016. He's returning to Bellator to fight for the first time in 2 years against Timothy Johnson, who's no slouch. He's 3-3 in Bellator, but if you look at some of the names he's fought, we know that he's not scared to go to sort of abroad to fight the hometown fighter when he fought Czech Congo in Paris and won.
Yeah.
But with that being said, it would have been I watched the fight and wrote an instant reaction piece you can check out on MMASucka.com, and it's just, it would have been the perfect time for him just to leave the gloves in the octagon, draped in the Russian tricolor, just and walk off into the sunset. Now, when eventually he does retire, probably maybe the end of beginning of next year, end of next year, he's probably got one fight left. But realistically, obviously he's going to be fighting at heavyweight. He's not beating a Ryan Bader. So what's the path for Fedor next? Is kind of what I was alluding to in my article, was where does he go from here? He's unlikely to get another fight in Moscow so soon after this one. Why would you not want to retire in your hometown, having just scored a pretty flawless knockout? It was I think it was a sort of right straight left hook, huge overhand right, which I'm pretty sure he pulled from almost outside of the octagon right around and landed on Timothy Johnson. And what I liked about it is he knew the referee was there, but it wasn't quite quick enough in my opinion. But Fedor knew that I don't need to land any more shots. He's out. I don't need to land any more follow-up shots to put a stamp on it. He landed the right hand. Johnson just collapsed backwards, and the referee was on scene, but Fedor knew that he didn't need to follow up with any strikes. And like I say, it would have been the perfect time in the octagon to say, thank you to my hometown fans for the support tonight. This is my last dance. This is me. I'm done. And then sort of almost ride off into the sunset on a victory. But now we run the risk of Fedor, because he, in previous fights he hasn't looked great against Bader. He was knocked out with that sort of early almost jab, it looked like. With Matt Mitrione, we obviously had the double knockdown. Matt Mitrione's not a high level fighter in my opinion.
No.
So it's another risk that Fedor is obviously willing to take to go into another fight with potentially a much tougher test than Timothy Johnson, and not come out on top and end his career on a loss. But obviously, at 45, he hasn't got a long time left. So I think one more big name fight, and then all of Fedor's team won on the night in Moscow. So it's transition more into that. Obviously, he is transitioning into that now, but one more fight and then really put all of your focus on your teammates.
Yeah, no, it was a great fight. He clearly came to brawl with like the way he was standing and everything like that. But and then knocked him out. Like that was it. That's great. And I like Timothy Johnson's number 2 heavyweight in Bellator. I mean, he's that's a heavyweight division, so yeah, it's fine. But I agree with you. Of like, this would have been a perfect moment to hang it up. Last fight, he headlined Saitama Super Arena in Tokyo, Japan, kind of where he made his career, where he made his everything in his career was made in the Saitama Super Arena. Got a knockout over Rampage Jackson there. Next fight, headlining Moscow, gets a knockout there. Team Fedor went undefeated. Habib Nurmagomedov is his cage side. Would have been a really good moment to hang up the gloves. It would have been ideal. It would have looked amazing. To do another fight now, like I guess we've been saying this for years. Like after he beat Fabio Maldonado back in like whatever year that was, a decade ago, we were like, man, that's good. That's good. You can retire now. You know what I mean? Yeah, you beat exactly. Pedro Hizzo. Maybe it's time to hang up the. We've been saying this every fight, but I really do feel like the last 2 fights really just put a cap on their career. What's left for you? You did Tokyo again, got a knockout there. You did Moscow, done a knockout there. Like anyone notable that you put in front of Fedor Emelianenko, I'm the biggest Fedor fan in the world. That is, I got. He has been for 15 years. Fedor is the man. Junior Dos Santos beats him. Alistair Overeem beats him. Vitor Belfort probably beats him. You know what I mean? Of like, who are you going to put in front of him who's not just a complete cam?
Yeah, and you don't put him in there with anyone remotely ranked because, like you say, these guys beat him. And yes, he's just beating the number 2 heavyweight in Timothy Johnson. But if you look further down, you've got Czech Congo, Tyler Fortune, Linton Vassell, all of these guys beat him.
Yeah.
And they're not good fights for him either. Czech Congo loves to brawl, as does Fedor, but that's a 50-50 of who lands first. And you don't want to see Fedor going out in his final fight and being knocked out cold. That's not what you want. And you want him going out on a performance like he put on against Timothy Johnson, where you look flawless, you barely take any damage, and you get the knockout.
Yeah.
Which is, like I say, maybe it comes out that he will retire, post fight, but it would have been perfect just to leave his gloves in the octagon with the Russian flag in Russia. Yep. Happy days, but it wasn't to be. But like I say, it was a good performance. The overall card I thought was quite good as well. Strange ending to the co-main event where we had the dislocated finger. He tried to put it back in. The referee called it off. His corner put it back in. He wanted to continue, but the referee had already called it off. Nurmagomedov was doing Nurmagomedov things. Yep. One of the easiest takedowns I've ever seen landed, to be honest. Why, when you're fighting someone of Nurmagomedov's wrestling ability, you throw in a 3 or 4 punch combo is simply beyond me, but it is what it is.
So Usman now, he's worth talking about. He's very notable in his career because he hasn't faced any real challenges. He's been flawless in every challenge they put in front of him. He's definitely ready for a step up in competition. Or do you think Bellator is going to keep building him like a Michael Venom Page or something like that? You know what I mean? Of like kind of throwing him bus drivers, throwing him like Uber drivers, things like this.
Exactly. Like you say, he's definitely ready for a step up in competition. He's fought 3 times in Bellator. I think he's got 2 finishes and a decision win. This last guy that he fought, I like I say, I don't know why you're throwing a 4 or 5 punch combo at someone who's got that good wrestling. It's just not. It's not logical to me, But we've got to remember that Usman Nurmagomedov's 23 or 24.
Very young. He's a young man.
He's 14-0, I think now. 14-0 after this weekend. I think he needs to be pushed along a little bit quicker, but not too quick. I know it sounds ridiculous, but not a Michael Venom Page pace, because that is tedious. And now I'd argue that he's ever so slightly past his prime, Michael Venom Page, but he's just getting the big fights that he needs.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing as we were saying about Sean O'Malley a few weeks ago, is he needs to be put in there against much stronger opposition to see how good he really is. We know that he is very good, both Nurmagomedov and Sean O'Malley, which, to be honest, I think would be a great fight between them two. But obviously, different weight classes and whatnot. But the thing is, we're never going to truly know how good Usman is or how good Sean O'Malley is, because they're not being put up against the caliber of competition that they are. With McGregor's rise, he was 1-0, and then in the UFC, and then he fought Max Holloway, who was an up and comer. Then he fought Dustin Poirier, who was an up and comer. Then he fought Diego Brandao, who was a tough winner.
Yes.
Then he fought Dennis Siver, the veteran.
Yep.
Then he was scheduled to face Aldo, but then he faced Chad Mendes, the wrestler, the two-time title challenger. Then he fought out. So you can see there's a clear step up in competition of people that are on his level. Poirier, when they first fought, was on his level. Diego Brandao had the experience over him of winning tough on his level. Dennis Siver, arguably, was a setup fight, but he had a lot more experience at a higher level than McGregor did. So there's always that sort of question. With these guys that are facing like Nurmagomedov, you know that he's going to run through them, and it's just how he defeats them. If he chooses to keep it standing, he'll keep it standing. If he wants to take it down, he'll take it down. And like you say, it's a slow burner at the moment, which at 23 years old isn't the worst thing in the world. But you can't, in MMA, you can't be getting into sort of, let's say his next 3 fights are sort of knockovers. You can't be getting to 17-0 having not really fought anyone. That's in one of the bigger promotions. This is the whole point of signing for a Belltor or a UFC, is the best fight the best. And if you're not fighting the best, what? You're just there for a payday, really.
And that's, I'm of two minds of it. It kind of like what you're alluding to. And like, he probably needs a few more fights to really sharpen who he is, because he didn't have an amateur career. He's only 23 years old. But out of his 14 fights, he's finished 12 of them. You know what I mean? Of like, maybe you're not being challenged. Like you didn't have any amateur fights because you're so far ahead of these guys. Like you don't need to be warming up. So I don't know who they put in front of him next. It's probably going to be some guy. I mean, this is what Bellator does when they have names like this, and they kind of did it. Strikeforce wasn't really like this all the time, but it's probably going to be someone I've never heard of in my life. I think that's
for sure.
Next for Usman Nurmagomedov, right?
Yeah, that's the thing. And you've got people. He's ranked. Just having a look now, he's ranked number 7 in the men's lightweight division. But number 4 Peter Queally is fighting number 1 Patricky Pitbull.
Yeah.
For the belt in 2 weeks' time, I think it is. But then you look, he's not going to fight. They're not going to put him against a Benson Henderson or a Brett Primus or a Sidney Outlaw or a Goti Yamahachi. So what's the point in having these rankings then if they're not going to try and push? But on paper, a perfect fight would be Benson Henderson. Experience versus sort of an amateur, as it were, ranked similar. One's coming off a loss last week. One's coming off a win this week. It makes sense. That's what the UFC would do. But Bellator aren't going to do that because they want to build Nurmagomedov's name in Bellator. And then you can pitch it of, by the time it could be 17-0, 6 Bellator fights, 5 finishes. I mean, it's kind of, they want to be able to get the sort of soundbite off him. But at the same time, let's not rush things through, but let's keep it moving on a steady pace, but a sensible step up in competition every time. And that's what they were doing with Aaron Pico. They put him in against, I think it was the guy called Freeman on his debut. He got knocked out and choked out pretty much within the first minute. And that's what they almost tried to rush Pico through. And they definitely killed the hype of Pico because he's lost, I think, 3 all by knockout.
Yeah.
Or by finish at least. But, I think they're scared of that happening again, to be honest. Which, Pico is probably the hottest prospect in MMA history, even, maybe.
Yeah.
And they sort of killed the hype by putting him in there too fast, too quickly. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Nurmagomedov have a slower start to his career, but then really ramp it up once he does start fighting the contenders. He'll fight 2 contenders and then go for a title shot.
Yeah, I can see that. I think that's absolutely reasonable. He's still a young man. We no reason to super rush him at this point, but he does need to step up in competition. Now, speaking of moving things forward, we got to move forward to the UFC. A thriller at middleweight. 2 guys coming off of a title fight loss. Paulo Costa versus Marvin Vettori. This was a middleweight. This was a catchweight. This was a light heavyweight fight. There was some fun stuff going on with some weight switches at the last minute. We apparently Paulo Costa was injured. Apparently he was out of shape. Apparently he wasn't really training. Clearly showed up and he was out of shape, but he was down to fight. Like he was willing to throw down. I think he said he had a broken foot, but he kept swinging his foot at 100% power in this fight or something like that. Like, yeah, the same thing to me.
Yeah.
Like, neither of these guys. The thing is that I like both of these guys. I think everyone in the MMA community likes both of these guys. The reason that they get so much hate is because neither of them learned how to lose gracefully. Whenever they have a loss, they have a list. Both of them have a list of excuses. So when they win, cool, that's fun. Neither of them can actually lose, and they make excuses, so neither of them are really getting better. And we did see this in this fight of like Marvin Vettori does the usual thing. He knows how to fight as a southpaw and shut down systems. He circles to the outside, controls the lead hand, throws 1-2s straight down the pipe when the opening is there. He has better timing. Paulo Costa is not getting better at all. He's shelling up on defense. He's moving back on straight lines. He's just throwing power punches without any setups or anything like that. He's not showing any new tools. He's not showing any more intelligence. It was a frustrating fight to watch, but it was a lot of fun to watch as well. It was a great fight. What do you think of it?
Yeah, no, I completely agree with the fact that Costa is the same fighter pretty much as we saw him against. I think he made a big step up when he fought Romero.
Mm-hmm.
But since then, when he fought Izzy, nothing new. Now that we've seen him go 25 minutes with Vettori, that's maybe the only thing that we really learned about Costa is that he can go the 25-minute distance, but can he go the 25-minute distance when he fights in his own weight class? When he has to cut weight? Who knows, I did see that Dana White said he's now a light heavyweight. He won't let him fight at middleweight again, but we've seen Dana say that many times, so don't be surprised to see him at 185 next time out. But like you say, he throws these big power shots without any setups, but because of the power that he holds in his hands, he can afford to, which is, in a way, watching it from like our perspective where we're constantly sort of analyzing it, is frustrating in a way, because we want to see someone with that amount of power. If he just set up his shots, he's probably getting the knockout, and we did see him set up. The only thing we really saw him set up was with the high kick. He was ripping to the body for the first two rounds. He was ripping to the body with that high kick, and then he went upstairs, landed on Vettori, who's got a solid chin. That landed flush, and Vettori took some big shots, especially in the final round. But like you say, he shells up on the fence, and Vettori, in my opinion, could have got the finish if he. It's the Max Holloway thing of sort of pity patter shots on the forearms and then just rip into the body, rip to the body. Costa is shelled all the way up.
Mm-hmm.
Just exposing it is mid. And it's there. It's screaming at you, sort of almost saying, hit me, And someone like, if that happened against a Robert Whittaker and Israel Adesanya, they are pity patting on the forearms and ripping to the body, because as you're throwing shots upstairs, it's got him thinking, I've got to keep my hands up, and then you smash the body, and 4 or 5 shots to the body per round, that's 1 a minute, and Costa was showing up for at least once every minute, give on average, I'd say. And Vettori just wasn't. He was headhunting, and we saw the stats at the bottom of the screen on the broadcast that Costa was mixing it up a lot better than Vettori. He was going to the head, going to the body, and occasionally going to the legs, whereas Vettori was predominantly headhunting. And like I say, to me it was frustrating, because I think Vettori could have maybe not got the knockout, but he could have made because he lost that 5th round pretty decisively. He could have made it a lot easier for himself, and it does say that Marvin Vettori landed 33 strikes to the body. No, I personally didn't see 33 strikes to the body.
Well, one of the notes I made before Vettori's fight with Adesanya was that he doesn't mix high and low. He just, at a certain point in his career, he was mixing strikes well, and over time, he's just become a headhunter. And this fight showed that. Like you said, if your opponent has a high guard, they're showing you their body. That is an open target now, right? That's how you should be thinking. Exactly. But yeah, Vettori, like, this is the frustrating thing, is not showing anything new. He fought the same fight. Paulo Costa fought the same fight. Like, neither of these guys are really showing any new tricks. They're not showing any new counters. They're not showing anything particularly interesting. Fun fight. Like, I do encourage you, if you haven't seen it, it's a banger of a fight. But yeah, like you said, why are you not mixing high and low against a guy like this? A guy who maybe is struggling with cardio, who clearly has like a Brock Lesnar body, so he probably doesn't have great cardio even on the best of days. Why are you not working the body? Why are you not working the legs? All of his power is generated from his legs and his torso. Hit him in the torso. Hit him in the legs. Marvin,
Yeah, exactly.
you're so talented. Be smarter.
He landed 3 leg kicks or 3 strikes to the leg, Vettori, and you've got a guy who's, you could see, both guys for some reason in every grappling exchange they just slid off each other. They were really sweaty. I don't know why that was the case. It was strange. And after every round, Costa's team would dump a whole bottle of water on him and making it even more slippy. So, like you say, you've got a guy who's clearly tired or getting tired in Costa. You beat up his legs. He's then got sort of all the blood's rushing to his legs as well. He's having to sort of almost drag his legs around with him. It just doesn't make, to me, it just doesn't make an awful lot of sense why you wouldn't just even fake the leg kick. Feint a jab to the body and go upstairs, because we know that Vettori is essentially a headhunter. So feint the jab to the body and come upstairs. Like a bit like we were talking about Deontay Wilder. He's jabbing to the body to get Fury's hands down so that he could land upstairs. Now, if you, especially with Costa as he was tired, if you feint to the body, he's really going to drop his hands because he doesn't want to be hitting that stomach, exposing his head. And we've seen him knocked out in his last fight, and yes, that was at 185 pounds, and it was against Israel Adesanya, caught behind the ear and all this, but he's obviously susceptible to being knocked out. Izzy did it, so why not try and utilize that if you're Marvin Vettori? And with Vettori, like you say, he didn't show us anything new coming off his last fight against Izzy. He lost that, and he lost that decisively. If you compare that to Robert Whittaker, when he fought Darren Till and he fought Calvin Gastelum, we've learned a lot more about Robert Whittaker since he lost to Israel Adesanya.
He's shown new stuff.
Vast improvement, exactly, yeah. And now, going into a second Israel Adesanya fight, you're really questioning, right, can Whittaker do this? Because, the improvements that he's shown against the improvements that, or the changes that Adesanya might make, it's going to be a much, much closer fight than the first one. If Vettori was to rematch Adesanya tomorrow, it would go exactly the same way, because he's shown nothing new in this fight as he in comparison to the Adesanya fight last time out. And it's frustrating, but like I say, maybe there's this level to this game. I think the middleweight division's got Adesanya and Whittaker, a big drop off, and then you've got the Derek Brinsons, Cannoniers, Costas, Vettori's, Darren Till's in and around there, but it's quite a big drop off.
No, I completely agree with you. The original scheduled fight, I think back in April, was Robert Whittaker versus Paulo Costa, and now in hindsight, knowing what we know about those two fighters, Robert Whittaker would have got a first round finish. I have no doubt about that, right? Like, these guys are so far ahead. Yeah, Paulo Costa is a top 5 middleweight. He would have got absolutely starched by Robert Whittaker. But let's move forward to UFC 267. We got a big weekend coming up here. I think this one is free on TV. It's from Abu Dhabi in the United Arab Emirates. We got the 2 oldest men in the division. Now, when you got these 2 guys fighting in a title, you just start to think, man, Vadim Nemkov might be the best light heavyweight in the world. Anyway, we won't go into that because we won't stop if we start that. But Jan Błachowicz is fighting Glover Teixeira for the light heavyweight championship. I'll do a quick rundown on it, on what I see, and then you can go into it a little bit more. Glover is so hittable. He's glacially slow in his reactions to strikes. He gives up center control. Smith and Santos were able to land tons of strikes on him with little issues. He overcommits on strikes, leaning his head ahead of his knees. He's leaning way too far out, and he's getting hit a lot. He's just tough. Like, he gets away with this because he's so tough. He uses head movement and shoulder rolls instead of moving his feet as defense, but he's quite flat-footed, so he's a really hittable target, and his head is big, so it's a big old target. Typically relies on straight line entries. I don't know if he's gotten better over time or just the light heavyweights have gotten worse. And I hate to throw him under the bus because he's going into a title fight, but going back and watching tape, this is almost a mismatch. Glover won't be as elusive as Adesanya was. If you stand in front of Jan Błachowicz with no footwork, you're going to get hit. Jan has great distance control. He moves just enough, using his feet first so opponents can't land on him. Feet first defensively, it circles out from the cage well, so you can't trap him very easily. He's not using straight lines on entry. He's not using straight lines on exit. He is better than I remember him being. Going back and watching tape, I think, man, this guy's really good, right? He loves his lead left hook. Same punch, that has been landed on Glover a bunch of times. He uses a lead left hook on entries, on exits. He uses it in the clinch. He uses it mid combination. My official pick will be a lead left hook knockout round 1 for Jan Błachowicz. What do you see in this fight? What do you think of these two boys?
Yeah, I agree with you. It's I think Glover's more than deserving of a title shot. 5-0 in his last 5 at least, and this, finally we're getting in that division. We're getting someone that actually deserves the title shot. With the greatest respect to Adesanya, he hadn't earned a light heavyweight title shot. Really, he's a small middleweight.
Yeah,
there's talk of him fighting John Jones, and then as soon as John Jones leaves, he comes up to try and fight Jan Błachowicz, which is suspect in itself. But we've got a fight now that is deserving. Glover Teixeira is deserving of the fight. It's the Carla Esparza thing. She's deserving of a strawweight fight, but they're just going with the sort of the money fight in Zhang versus Namajunas. But yeah, like you say, I think Glover he's too hittable. But with that being said, he's a well-rounded mixed martial artist. Against Izzy Adesanya, Błachowicz was only ever going to face a striker. Izzy's not going to shoot for him. He's not going to try and get him into the clinch. He's going to try and keep distance, in and out movement, and look to land on him. Glover is very confident in his boxing. He doesn't throw an awful lot of kicks. So, Błachowicz can really look to get his timing down and counter the boxing, because he hasn't got to really be scared of like a high kick, maybe a couple of leg kicks thrown in there by Glover. But I can't remember the last time I saw Glover Teixeira throw a high kick, to be honest. But he can mix in the takedown as well. He's got good jiu-jitsu, but so is Jan Błachowicz, and it's like you say, I think it is a slight mismatch, but I thought that against Thiago Santos, and I thought that against Anthony Smith, and I thought that against Nikita Krylov, I think it was.
Yeah.
These are all solid guys, and Teixeira managed to sort of almost old man them on his way to victory, and he has looked good in his last 4 or 5 fights, yes, but then he was well dominated by Corey Anderson, who was just able to sort of press him up against the fence and work his wrestling and dominate him. And I know MMA math doesn't always work, but Błachowicz dealt with Anderson the last time they fought easily, first round knockout. And like you say, I can see Błachowicz getting it done by finish, because he can mix it up to the body and to the head. He's got that savage body kick that we saw against Dominic Reyes. And then when he gets you thinking about the kicks, he'll go upstairs and, like you say, land the lead left hook. But it's, I personally am picking Błachowicz, but in this one probably by maybe not first round, maybe I'm still seeing maybe a 3rd round finish, just because I think Glover is. To be fair, I don't know why I'm picking that, because like you say, Glover's very hittable. When we saw against Alex Gustafsson, he was absolutely dominated in the boxing. I don't think Jan Błachowicz is as quick as Gustafsson, but he's certainly more powerful. But yeah, it's like I say, I'm not mad about the fight at all, because I think Glover's more than deserving of it. He's I think 5-0 or 6-0 in his last 6 or 5. But I just think there's slight levels to this, and to be honest as well, I can't think. Can you think of anyone that's had a title shot and then had that amount of gap in between their second title shot? With Glover Teixeira, obviously fought John Jones back in 2014, and now 7 years later he's fighting again for the title. I can't think of anyone that's had a career resurgence like Błachowicz.
Not in legitimate title shots, in terms of he earned both of those. You know what I mean? Like, he absolutely earned them. Hoist Gracie is the example, but he didn't even earn that title. Like that UFC 60 something against Matt Hughes or 50 something against Matt Hughes. He didn't earn it. The UFC was just like, man, we need Hoist Gracie because we don't have anyone else in this division at the moment. Other than no, there's no one else who's waited that long and earned their title shot, right? Glover absolutely deserves it.
Yeah, exactly. And this is what I was trying to say is, yes, he's got losses to Gustafsson, to Corey Anderson, but he's rallied and he's come back. And we've seen guys coming off losses that, Gustafsson himself was coming off a loss when he fought Daniel Cormier for the title. Was he deserving of it? Arguably not. But at the same time, Glover Teixeira is more than deserving of the title shot 6 or 7 years after his first title shot, which just shows to sort of the skill of the man, but it also probably shows where the light heavyweight division is at the moment.
So we're moving from the light heavyweight division, moving probably to the UFC's best division in bantamweight. Petr Yan in his last fight won the fight under Pride rules. He agreed to the fight. It was a big confusion. He agreed to the fight under Pride rules, but he signed the UFC rule contract. It was just, I think it was a miscommunication. So he won the championship under Pride rules. He's Petr Yan is a great tight Muay Thai style striker. Cory Sandhagen is just coming off of a close decision loss to TJ Dillashaw. Cory probably, even though officially he had a loss, he had the best moments in that fight overall. If you said Cory won that fight, I think you and I talked about it at length. I think that's absolutely fair. Petr uses tons of fakes low and high, often forces counters from his opponents by moving back. If you get too close to him, he does a really good trip takedown. He strikes off rhythm. He strikes he surprises really great strikers, even like Jose Aldo and Uriah Faber. He surprised them. And that's how good he is at striking, right? Cory Sandhagen uses lots of stance switching, lots of shifting entries, tons of fades, jabs and low kicks. He loves a good jab entry on everything that he does, mixes high and low well. He likes to, as the term is that Dominic Cruz says, he likes to go first and third. He first, then he waits for you to counter, then he goes again. This is a really fun fight. Bantamweight is such a good division. This is a great fight because I could see Petr just standing in the center trying to counter and not finding any opportunities just because Cory is entering so quickly. He's entering and exit on different angles. He's just able to work the center. On the flip side, I could also just see Petr gets a takedown and absolutely slaughters this guy in the first round. I actually don't know how this fight is going to go. And that's what makes it such a fun, compelling fight. I'm going to pick Petr officially, but I wouldn't be surprised if he just actually got outstruck in this fight by Cory. This is a great fight. What do you think, Frazer?
Yeah, for sure. I think this is the fight on the card that I'm most excited for. Yeah. I think it's a better fight, in my opinion, than the Aljo Petr Yan fight that we were originally scheduled to get for the undisputed, obviously for the interim title. But we've seen that Aljo Sterling Petr Yan fight, and it wasn't close at all. No. Aljo was, if not 4-0 down, it was 3-1 down in that fourth round when it was all, all the controversy with the knee and whatnot. And where does Aljo go from there? He was well dominated.
Yeah.
Cory Sandhagen is a fresh fight. Yes, he lost to Aljo Sterling. Yes, he lost to TJ Dillashaw. But Sterling, he was caught cold, taken down, choked out within the first 2 minutes, I think that was. And then against TJ Dillashaw, obviously we broke it down in length on our podcast. You can check out. It's still up on the site. And I picked Cory Sandhagen. I thought Cory Sandhagen won that. I did think that he'd have a much bigger reach advantage coming into this one. It's only 3 inches, which, like you say, he does use the jab, but he's long. He's 5'11" at bantamweight. He's got a 4-inch height advantage and a 3-inch reach advantage. So I think that sort of alleviates the reach advantage even further. So we'll be ever slightly punching down on you, not ridiculously, but that is really going to help him work the jab. But I don't think that he's going to be able to mix it up to the body so well. But I do think, we have seen Yan shell up and look to land the quick sort of almost, like you say, like a Muay Thai counter, shell up and land quickly. If he does that against Sandhagen, I can see Sandhagen almost landing sort of a 3 or 4 punch combination and coming in with a knee to the body and then cutting the angle and getting off center, because like we know that Yan does like to sort of shell up, cover up. He'll take 3 or 4 on the guard just to try and land that big, and he's got power, so why not do that? But against Sandhagen, who does cut the angle, I can see him landing a few strikes, knee to the body, cutting the angle, getting out. And if I was Sandhagen's team, I'd say, look, go in there, attack the legs, leave the body unless he's shelled up, because you don't want to be attacking Petr Yan's body and risk getting taken down and smashed, because against TJ Dillashaw, we didn't see an awful lot from Sandhagen off his back. How much of an improvement will he have made? Probably not an awful lot since that fight, off his back anyway.
Yeah.
And I think the thing is, obviously, yes, this is on, I think it was about a month's notice, short notice, but Sandhagen's always going to be in shape. So I can see this going 5 rounds, and I'm actually picking Sandhagen.
Fair enough. Yep.
I think he's fought higher level competition. They both fought Aljo Sterling. Uriah Faber, let's be honest, it wasn't his time. Jose Aldo, again, that wasn't the best bantamweight Jose Aldo we've seen. We saw him against Pedro Munoz a few weeks ago. a few months ago. Sorry. I think that Aldo maybe even beats Petr Yan. But on the night, he was very much outclassed. John Dodson, Jimmy Rivera's, these guys aren't even in the UFC. John Dodson lost this weekend.
True.
And ex-MMA. But then you compare that to Cory Sandhagen. He fought Marlon Moraes, who was only coming off the one loss at the time, which, that win hasn't aged well. But at the time, it's a very good win. He's also fought Aljo. Yes, he lost, but, I think that fight doesn't go that way 9 times out of 10. You Frankie Edgars, you TJ Dillashaw last time out. I think he's fought ever slightly higher level competition, and I think he's looked better doing it as well. Petr Yan has looked dominant, but he's never put on that performance where you're like, he is the best bantamweight on. He's clearly got holes in his game.
Yeah.
But it's just who can exploit those holes in his game. And, lucky for him, we haven't seen it yet. He has got that one loss to Aljo, which we didn't even see the flaws in his game sort of utilised then, despite the fact that he officially lost the fight. He didn't lose the fight. Come on, you know what I mean? And like you say, he does use those trip takedowns. So if Sandhagen does look to clinch with him, like we say, Sandhagen's got 4-inch height advantage. So there's a lot of Sandhagen's leg there to sweep, which Yan will probably look to utilise, because why not? It's mixed martial arts. It's not a boxing Muay Thai fight. I think Jan's the more well-rounded mixed martial artist, but I think Cory Sandhagen knows how to use his length and his reach, and
yes,
I think he might get it done by. I think it'll be close. I can't see a stoppage on either side personally, but I think maybe unanimous decision for Sandhagen.
No, and I wouldn't be surprised to see it. He knows how to use it, even though he doesn't have a huge reach advantage in terms of numbers. He uses his length really effectively. And Petr Yan often is flat-footed because he's trying to set up counters. And maybe if you are able to move in and out fast enough and you don't move like Aljamain Sterling, maybe you can get it done. And that's why I was really uncertain in this fight. Now, moving down the card, it's again the same thing of levels of competition here. Islam Makhachev is fighting Dan Hooker. Dan Hooker's coming out on late notice. Islam Makhachev is, of course, riding the hype machine of being Khabib Nurmagomedov's mentor. And we've seen mentor relationships in the past in MMA. And I don't know if this mentor relationship will be like Shogun Rua, Vanderlei Silva, where the mentor is clearly so much better and he becomes so much better than the mentee. Or will it be more like George St. Pierre, Rory McDonald, where clearly one guy is just better than the other and he never actually, finds his full potential? With Islam Makhachev, I don't know what his potential is, because this is the biggest step up in competition he is at. This is the toughest, stiffest test. Now, on the eye test, of course, Islam is better. He's been taking guys down and mauling them. But in terms of who he's been facing and looking at their opponents on paper, Dan Hooker is the better pick here. Like, I think it's insane. Like, how gangster is Dan Hooker for stepping in on short notice? They just said a couple of weeks out. Like, it's an amazing thing. I don't know who's going to win this fight, because we don't know what Islam can do against this level of competition. I think Dan has fought much better opponents and done better against them. I don't know. I don't even know where to sink my teeth into in this fight. What do you think of this one?
Yeah, like you say, I think it's I've almost lost words on the fight. I think it's a brilliant fight. And it's a step up in competition that Makhachev needs. Thiago Moises is a good fighter, but he's not ever going to be anywhere near the title and anywhere near the top 5, whereas Dan Hooker is. He came very close to beating Dustin Poirier. He obviously got that 5-round victory over Paul Felder. He did get the loss to Chandler, not last time out, but time before last out at the beginning of the year. And then he looked absolutely dominant against Nasrat Haqparast last time out. And that was only, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago?
2 weeks ago. And he had like fight of the year against Dustin Poirier, right? This guy's been good at competition.
And then you compare that to Islam Makhachev, who's fought Arman Sarukian, which was a very close fight, Ricardo Ramos, Drew Dober, who was good, but he was so easy to take down in that fight. And then obviously, Thiago Moises in the main event last time out. I think Dan Hooker, like you say, is on paper the pick to go with. Yes, he's taking it on short notice, but you don't lose any cardio having fought 3 weeks ago. and taken maybe 5 days after your last fight to accept this fight. And it's a completely different fight, you know. I think Mackachev, you know, I've got the stats up here, averages 3.31 takedowns with a 65% accuracy. But Dan Hooker's got 80% takedown defense. So,
yeah,
you know, the stats would suggest that Dan Hooker's going to be able to keep it on his feet, but he's never fought anyone like with the wrestling of his own Mackachev. But what is interesting to me is Dan Hooker lands 4.95 strikes per minute, whereas Islam Makhachev lands just 2.24. So Dan Hooker is a much more active guy. If you can keep Islam Makhachev constantly thinking, you know, Dan Hooker is going to be putting a jab out there, putting a leg kick out there. The knee of Dan Hooker, I think, is going to play a big factor in this, because we know, you know, ask Ross Pearson, we know Dan Hooker has got some of the best knees in the UFC, let alone in the lightweight division.
Yeah.
And if Makhachev, you know, he has got a habit of shooting in without really trying to disguise it much. If he does that against Dan Hooker and Dan Hooker catches him in one of these knees, it's lights out for Makhachev. You know, it's Dan Hooker will get that knockout via knee, you know. So he needs to remember to disguise it somehow, jab, throw a low kick and go for the takedown. And like we saw against like we saw in his last fight, Thiago Moores has kept his back up against the fence pretty much for the however long it lasted, 4 and a bit rounds. Dan Hooker can't do that. He's got to meet him in the middle. And yes, we know that a takedown is easier to defend when you're up against a cage, but it's also easier to get a takedown when your opponent's pressed up against a cage, because they've got nowhere to sort of back into or nowhere to almost, I use the phrase run away from, but you know what I mean. That you're limiting their distance to move left, to move right.
Yes.
So Dan Hooker, I think, is going to be best served meeting Makhachev in the middle and just tubing it out with him in the middle, and you know, not accepting the takedown as well, which is what Dan Hooker is very good at. He hasn't been controlled an awful lot when he's on the floor. And, you know, he does have, again, looking at the stats here, he's slightly taller at 6 foot, but he's got a 5-inch reach advantage. Pump that jab out. If you're constantly putting a jab in Makhachev's face, he's not going to be able to shoot for the takedown, let alone want to shoot for the takedown. If he's constantly got something just hit him, you know, even if it's not landed, just a jab just in his face, just keeping his hands high, If you're just pumping out that jab for 15 minutes, Makhachev's going to struggle more than he originally would to be able to get the takedown, which I think would serve Dan Hooker quite well in this one.
Yeah, and like you said, I think this is also in the bigger cage, which I think is going to favor Dan Hooker a lot more here, because like you pointed out, if you're circling out, don't put your back against the cage if you're trying to avoid takedowns. And I think that's going to really help Dan Hooker here. I'm picking Dan Hooker. I've been wrong in the past whenever we have these step up in competitions, whenever we have like a prospect versus a proven top 5 guy. But yeah, I'm going to pick Dan Hooker in this one. And speaking of prospect versus some top guy, Khamzat Chimaev versus Ali Jingliang. I don't know. Khamzat hasn't fought anybody like that. Like he's fought 13 seconds in the UFC in total or something like that. He's probably going to beat the gatekeeper. I don't know, but I don't really have I have no analysis for this. He's probably going to win. What do you think?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like you say, last time out was 13 seconds against Jared Meerschaert.
Yeah.
Then he fought John Phillips, who's notoriously poor on the ground. You know, he's a brawler, and Rhys McKee, who
that's not anybody.
Yeah, he took the fight on 4 or 5 days' notice, I think.
Yeah.
So, you know, yes, he's looked impressive, but you know, his average fight time is 3 minutes in the UFC.
Yeah.
And his stats are completely skewed, you know. He averages nine strikes a minute. Well, that's easy when you've got someone like Rhys McKee or John Phillips that are just willing to accept being on the floor and being just essentially pounded into the floor. Li Jingliang, last time out against Santiago Ponzinibbio, we saw that he's got solid, I don't want to say counter shots, because, you know, it's not exactly like Ponzinibbio was rushing into that one. He'd been out for a long time, and he was sort of almost trying to rush the knockout, and Li Jingliang caught him.
Mm-hmm.
But this is a clear step up in competition. It's back down at welterweight. We obviously saw Khamzat fight at middleweight, but I think just the sheer level of, I don't know, I'm not sure how many fights Jingliang's had in the UFC, but he's been in the UFC since 2014.
He's been around, quite a while, actually. A surprising amount of time for someone that I still think of as a gatekeeper, right? He's had a lot of
exactly, yeah. And in the past 3 years, he's lost to Jake Matthews first. There's not really any, that Jake Matthews is a good fighter, and he's lost to Neil Magny, who again is a solid fighter. He hasn't been finished in any of those two fights, and the only fight that he was finished in was back in 2015.
Yeah,
but
he's tough.
We have seen him tough. Yeah, for sure. But we've seen him susceptible to the takedown. Against Jake Matthews, he was dominated on the ground, which is essentially, how we saw Jake Matthews get the victory in that one. And for some reason, what I remember from that is just Jingliang just gouging the eyes of Jake. It was awful.
Explicit. It was so obvious.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, there was no trying to hide. It wasn't discreet at all. But that's what we saw in that one. And if he does that to Khamzat, I think it will just piss Khamzat off, to be honest, and lead to him just wanting to go. But like we said, we haven't seen Khamzat since Fight Island last year, I think it was, against Meerschaert, where he fought.
Keep in mind, he was so sick after the Fight Island. He was so sick with COVID that he retired officially. Like, he almost died.
Yeah, for sure. And how much, if he goes in thinking that he's going to smash up Li Jingliang, sorry, like his other opponents, and hasn't taken this camp as maybe as seriously as he should have, and hasn't focused so much on the cardio, which is the Francis Ngannou effect almost. Is I'm knocking all these guys out, I'm submitting these guys with ease. I don't really need to focus on my cardio because I'm just going to go in there, I'm just going to do what I always do. And it could be a long night for Khamzat, but I do think he gets it done. I think Leach is too long, and he's got too much body for Khamzat to be able to just grab onto, to be honest.
It's a good step up. It's tough, but like you said, sure. he beats the gatekeeper. Go ahead.
Yeah, without doubt.
Oh, okay. And last quick fight, Volkan Oezdemir is fighting Magomed Ankalaev. This is a fun little fight. I like this fight. My only notes on it, I put Magomed is not as good. Volkan Oezdemir is clearly the better fighter, but Magomed's probably going to win. I don't know.
Yeah. I didn't think he looked too good at his last time out, Ankalaev, against Nikita Krylov. Obviously, he had those two weird fights against Kutalaba. The first one that ended when Kutalaba tried to almost play possum.
Yeah.
And then actually was finished in the end. Yes, that is what it is. And then we had Volkan Oezdemir last time out against Jiří Procházka, which is, what can you take from that fight, really? Procházka is what he is. It's difficult to take any tape of how to expose Oezdemir from that fight, because no one fights like Jiří. It's Ankalaev can't, say, I'm going to start throwing spinning attacks like Jiří, because no one fights like him. It's like trying to get tape on Michel Pereira.
Yeah.
Or Johnny Walker. These are crazy guys. These are the guys who haven't got an awful lot of good technique, but the technique that they drill works for them. And I think on that day Jiří probably beats anyone at 205, and I think from what I've read, I think he's making weight this weekend just in case Glover or Jan fall out. So he'll be there. Maybe has a word with Ankalaev and lets him know his secrets, but I'm not so sure that that's going to be the case. But it's a good fight. I think it's the right fight to make. Ankalaev definitely needs that step up in competition. We've seen him pretty much dominate every opponent that he's faced in the UFC so far, apart from for 1 second against Paul Craig in London, when Paul Craig choked him out with the second to go. I was there live at that event, and I thought that they just could, he tapped, but the horn obviously goes off to signal the end of the fight. So I was like, you know what? This Scottish guy, obviously in England, he's got a lot of fans down here. He's lost a dominant decision. but you've seen the referee wave it off. And so, okay, that doesn't usually happen. Usually it just breaks the two fighters up at the end of 15 minutes. I'm not really sure what's, and obviously you haven't got the instant, you can't rewind it. You haven't got instant replay in the arena. And Paul Craig walking off with his hands up. I was like, come on, mate. Like you've just been dominated for 15 minutes. This, by all means, hold your hands up if it was a close fight and try and let the judges know that you won it. But it's not, and you just see Ankalaev lying on the floor, and then Bruce Buffer announces submission by triangle, and she's like, what? No way! Like he's pulled off a triangle with a second to go. It's absolutely. And then referee's called a stop to this one. He hasn't. It's the end of the fight. Like why? Bruce Buffer's he dropped one here, and it was amazing to be there. And like I say, since then, or before then and since then, Ankalaev's dominated everyone in his face.
Yeah.
He didn't look as good against Nikita Krylov last time out, but Krylov's an awkward customer, and I think to open up the main, I think it's the first fight on the main card, isn't it? So I think it's a great fight to open up the main card, and then you got the prelims that there's plenty of good fights on as well, just to get you sort of almost warmed up for that main card. So I'm excited for Saturday.
No, yeah, UFC 267. It's a good looking one. Thanks for the breakdown on Magomed Ankalaev versus Volkan Oezdemir. It's a tough fight to pick. I don't know where Volkan's at. I don't know.
Yeah.
Volkan's clearly better.
He had the title opportunity against DC on the Miocic and Ngannou, and it went how I thought it would go. DC took him down and dominated him, finished it. I think, if I remember, it was a crucifix, and then he lost to Anthony Smith. He lost to Brzezinski.
Yeah. But
then he's got some good wins as well. So it's, what is Volkan Oezdemir? You don't know. I was there when he fought Dominic Reyes. I think it might have even been the same card as the Ankalaev Craig fight, and he just didn't ever seem like he got. Yeah, I think he should have won that fight, but he never seemed like he got going. He was happy to sort of cruise in third gear, and he's got a fight now that every fight's going to be his last fight. So I think he's got to really step it up against Ankalaev.
No, totally agree. The UFC 267 is going to be a great card. We're going to have lots of previews up on the site. We're going to have the live results up on the site as well. Also going on this week, we have Dana White Contender Series PFL 10. Kayla Harrison's going to win $1 million. Check it out. UAE Warriors 1 Championship Next Gen Combat to Global 25. CFFC is back, and then UFC 267 this weekend. I'll do a quick run out, and then you can get the last word in. My name is Tim Wheaton with Tim Wheaton MMA. We are the MMA Sucka crew. Make sure to check us out at MMASucka.com. You can find me more, Tim Wheaton MMA, on Twitter or Instagram. Frazer, play us out of here. Let the people know where they can find more.
Yeah, so like Tim said, MMASucka.com will be all over that all week with staff picks and breakdowns of each fight and previews and whatnot. We'll have the live results. Best thing about this card is that it's local time to the UK. Its main card kicks off at 7 o'clock. So expect us to be live tweeting, live Instagram on MMASucka.com. You can find me at Frazer Curran Writing, and keep it locked to MMA Sucka. We'll be there all week, and this time next week we'll be breaking down what. We've just discussed it's a stat card and a stat week, PFL. Like you say, Kayla Harrison's going to win. It is what it is. It's a formality at this point. But we'll probably be more focused. There won't be an awful lot to break down from that fight. So we'll be predominantly breaking down UFC 267, which, we previewed today. And it's a phenomenal fight card. It's most important. It's local time to the UK. So
cheers. Thank you much.
Thank you very much.